Now you're ready.
I have to be ready because we're
And we're
rolling.
live.
Yeah.
Back in the recording studio with you, Thorbjørn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a few things on the agenda today. Of course, we're going to talk about your week of trust, which is I'm very interested in hearing, and I know the listeners are very curious about. And then afterwards, I want to talk about what I call going from being self-centered to being soul-centered. And I haven't told you about that yet, but I know it's going to make sense to you.
It already makes sense
so,
when you kind of say it. But
yeah,
obviously a lot deeper than that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's jump in, right? So my week with trust, is that what we're going to start out this recording with?
Yeah, for sure. That's what I'm really curious about.
So my week with trust was like, it was a roller coaster, right? Like it's no other way to put it than that. It was like a all right, I'll give some context. How about that? That probably makes a little bit more sense to people listening. But basically, so I work as a therapist, and I really love what I do. I love like working with people who come and see me and helping them with whatever they bring into the therapy space. And at the same time, it seems like it's somewhat important to get some kind of other work to supplement, being a therapist right now. So I got a job, and it was like meant to start on Monday, so it was like the day after our conversation for the last recording with talking about this trust and taking this kind of like taking it on for like this week that I would be in that space of trust. And it couldn't be better timing, right? Because like it was just like this kind of this incredible kind of opportunity, I guess you can call it, to kind of really embody that or practice that, and that was really hard to do, I must say. So I experienced that first aid work, and you know what, like it was just. It really didn't align, you could say, with me at all, with the kind of person I am, with the environment, the people, the actual work itself was like basically I wasn't really it's not something that I wanted to do, and so I was kind of torn in this kind of like, do I take the job, or do I kind of like listen to what's going on inside? And a lot of the stuff that was going on inside kind of like reflects this trust. Do I trust in myself? Do I trust in trust that there will be another job? Do I trust in that this is like a sign that this is not for me, right? Um, and I chose to follow that. I chose to kind of be in that space of trust and allow kind of yeah. I guess it wasn't easy because it was something that made sense logically, right? It made sense from like an economy sense. It made sense from a lot of other practical things. I knew deep inside it didn't make sense to me.
Right.
And so that's where I kind of came back to this conversation that we had, this trust thing, and going, okay, what about me? What do I value? What is kind of like, what is important right here? And can I trust in that there's something else will be there? And I kept coming back to that again and again and again. And that was what kind of like one of the biggest things that kind of helped me make that choice, right? and like kind of stand in that and like stand up for or own that, like what I wanted, like what I chose to do. And that took a lot of that took a lot of courage to actually, you know, to do that, right? Because I what I notice is that I can be like a person who wants to be nice, right? Like on the outside, like I want to be nice to others or be liked or whatever. Um, and so to make that choice, it was like not like it was going against that kind of like this mask or this kind of the logical part of me. Yeah. Yeah, so I made that choice, and here I am. And can I say, like, you know, when I did that as well, like, it was really unusual because, like, actually in that period of time, it was like my body started to make certain like, it was like my body was getting tense, I was getting back pains, I was getting, like, headaches. There was all these kind of, like, symptoms coming from
Getting signs.
basically, yeah, it was, like, real bodily signs. My eyes were, like, twitching and stuff like that. It's really, really unusual. Um, and on top of that, when I after I made this choice and I said it out loud to my wife, like I could literally feel like this tension and weight just like falling away from my shoulders, and this like kind of lightness being there. And that for me, that's a sign that like this is the choice, like the right choice for me in life, right? Or in that moment. So yeah. And funny enough, like doing that, right, it gave so much space or opened up this other space for like the thing that I love to do, which is like the therapy work that I'm doing. And some new clients came on board, and it just kind of like gives this new energy or this kind of like making that choice kind of opened up something else that was already there, but it kind of just opened it up even more. So that was my experience. Yeah, yeah.
I often think of this idea that a person can have two lives, and their life, both lives are going to go the exact same way, right? But in one life, the person is worrying every time, all the time about
Mm.
everything, but it ends the same way. And the other life, they distrust, and the same things happen. Now, that's probably not completely true, but just imagine that idea that your life is going to unfold anyway, or you're going to worry about it, or you're just going to trust because it's probably going to be fine, and it'll probably be the same thing anyway, because even if you choose something wrong a few times, it's still going to be wrong for you. You're never going to be able to keep doing that thing that isn't good for you, right? You're going to get out of it at some
And
point.
the challenging thing with that, at least in my life, and like for clients as well, right, that I see is like that the worry is so strong, right? The worry is
Mm,
like what's underneath the worry. It's like it's safety, right? It's wanting to
right.
control the future scenario to make it safe, to make it kind of like predictable. So this uncertainty in us like gets the best of us or gets the best of our mind, and put and
Mm,
like puts itself in the future, like try and control the environment, make sure that it's like kind of planned out and everything like that. And so this like when we're talking about trust, it's like a thing, it's like a dance, right? It's like something that we just like, you know, like the worry gets like one step, and then you gotta like, okay, balance it out. And that's this dance of like coming back to the trust every, not every time, but like, well, as much as you're aware of it, right? And that's the challenge. That's our challenge for you as well, and for myself, and for everyone to like come like join the dance and be in this kind of like place of trust.
yeah. And it makes me think of this idea of the devil's bargain, which is something I've observed in my life, is that often before someone succeeds, there is this devil's bargain. And so it always looks like this. If you're trying to do something, trying to do your business or whatever it is, I've always noticed this thing in myself and in other people, that if you've been trusting, if you've been holding out on hope, on faith, you've been following your good energy, and you're about to break through, then right before you break through, the wrong option is going to come along. And it's going to tick all the boxes of what your ego wants, but it's going to feel wrong for your soul. And we have to fall into that many times in our lives until we learn. But this devil's bargain, it happens with everything. It happens with relationships as well. If you're single, you're doing good, you're feeling good, and you're almost at the point where you're going to attract that partner you're looking for. A week before that, your ex is going to hit you up, and it's not going to be good, right? And it's a fascinating thing that I've observed in my own life and other people's life, and I want to put out there. If you're on this path of trusting, and if you're waiting for something to happen and you're following your energy, beware of the devil's bargain. It's going to come, and it's going to fulfill all the ego tick boxes, but it will not feel good. Do not take it, because it's just it's a regression, and then it's going to take longer for you to get back into the good energy. The wrong thing always comes along right before the right thing. That's my experience. And another experience I have is the encouragement, is that if you're going for something, like when I was going for my business, for example, there were many times where I was in doubt if I was supposed to do this or not. And whenever I was in doubt, if I'd come to the place where I was like, okay, I'm gonna drop it because it's not really working. I don't know if I'm good enough. It's a crazy plan, whatever. 3 or 4 days, someone would contact me for some reason. They would be like, hey, what you're doing is awesome. Keep doing it. That would keep happening. It always happened. Someone was always encouraging me. So also look for that. If you're on your adventure, if you're on the boat, you can't see land anymore, understand this devil's bargain and don't take it, but also look for the encouragement, because it will come. If you're really, really out there, someone will tell you, you're good at this, you should be doing this. This is your path, right?
But it takes time. You for me, Thorbjørn.
Yeah. Well, that's
great. Very encouragement to what I'm doing. So that's, yeah.
Well, I think you're doing exactly what you should be doing, and it's a fantastic thing for the world for you to be in that position, because you can really help people. So it's a match made in heaven, right?
I completely agree, right? And that's the thing. Like when you do something that you love, when you do something that the energy is so much there for that. Yes, there can be these, like you said, thoughts of doubt of like, am I really good enough to do this thing, right? And when you keep, like, for me, for instance, from my experience at least, like when we keep showing up, when we keep kind of like staying true to what that is for us, like even though that there is these thoughts of like all these barriers to succeeding, when we can kind of stay true to that, then like, wait, I don't even know what I was saying then. But what I was, that's right. What I was saying was that then it gives enough time just to experience like how we can affect other people's lives. And I think for me, it's like I'm at a point now that I can see in the clients that I've worked with over the last year that like I've like literally the people's lives have changed since like coming to therapy, right? And you can see that progression in them. The further they go, the longer the sessions, the more they go into themselves, and more they're able to kind of change their perspective and how they experience like their own emotions and thoughts and the world around them, right? And that's a wonderful thing. A wonderful thing. And it's like, they're the ones that have changed. It's not me, but I've maybe had an influence, right? Them coming to me maybe they've seen new things or they've gone deeper into themselves that they might not have done themselves. And some people can do that, and some people need somebody else to kind of guide them or help them with that as well. And that's perfectly okay, I think. So,
yeah, I use my friends as my therapists, so I do the same thing, but I just do it with you or with my brother or with my friends.
yeah.
So it's I still do the same thing, I just don't,
You don't pay
I
me
just
for
do
it.
it for I get people to do it for free because I'm smart.
Yeah. Not everyone has like friends that are therapists or friends that are like kind of on like that far like in their journey, you could say, or like kind of can see
Yeah.
things that you can't see maybe, or something like this. Yeah, so for each of us is different, right? Like, yeah, whatever works for you. I mean, it at the end of the day, it's important just to get support in some way, especially when you're going through
Yeah.
shit. So, yeah.
I think the way people are successful, when I think about people who start business and stuff, I see two ways in ways people are successful. The first way is the ego person who is successful. What they do is they start a business and then they just grind hard, and then they live in a mentally enclosed space where they're just going to work hard. They're not going to even allow themselves to think about failure, and they're just going to get their head down and grind, and they go into this sort of delusional place where they don't even allow themselves to feel insecure because they know they can't handle those kind of feelings or thoughts. They can't handle the uncertainty, so they just kind of put on like blinders, and then they just keep going. And then they work for 5 years or 10 years and they have success, because success in most cases is just persistence, right? It's just keep telling the world, this is what I want to do. And then at some point it sticks, right? That's kind of how it is. And some people will get lucky on the first day, and other people it take 10 years, and then there's somewhere between, right? So that's how the ego people do it. And of course, because they are in ego, they have a lot of flaws, they have a lot of things they can't fix, they don't look at themselves, and when they actually arrive at the goal, they rarely feel any real satisfaction because they've been in inner tension and delusion for 10 or 5 years or whatever. And of course, if you've done that for 5 or 10 years, you're not going to stop doing it. So they start their business with that state of mind, and they work with that kind of quality, and it works for a while, and there's a lot of conflict because they are in that ego state. They're successful, they'll earn money, but they won't really be very happy. Then there's the non-ego person, which is more like you and me are, where we start it up, and then we're available to these thoughts that come. So when we feel insecure, when we feel good and not good enough, when we doubt that it's going to work, that can throw us for a ride. It can kind of punch us out momentarily, because we are open, because we look at ourselves, we are open to the fact that maybe I'm doing it wrong, maybe I'm not worthy, maybe I'm not good enough, right? And those are not bad things to be open to, because those are the things that make us improve. And if we were really doing the wrong thing, or if we were in the wrong field, it would be important to be open to that. But the problem with that is that being that kind of sensitive is that it makes it more likely to end up in a spiral where you doubt yourself so much that it becomes very taxing for you, or you might quit, right? So a lot of people like us, they have to do things. Sometimes you hear people that have started a business and closed it 2 or 3 times before they succeeded, because they got kind of knocked out by their own spirals of doubt and self-doubt and so on. But people like that, conscious people, when they do succeed, they are in that success consciously, so they love and enjoy their success, because they can be present and they love what they've created, they love the result of it, they love doing it. Like when you have your client, you really enjoy the opportunity. You're not in it in a sort of numb way, which the ego motivated people are. And so when you succeed, it's a very good place to be. But the path, or when you reach some kind of certainty or success, but the path to that is difficult because we are so vulnerable to inside and outside influence.
Can I just say that, like, within that, like getting caught in these spirals of uncertainty and stuff, because that's, I can definitely relate to that, right? It's been a year of that, and it's probably not going anywhere. But I think the difference is how aware I am of it these days, and how
Mm.
aware I am of it, like when it starts to spiral, and to kind of catch it before it like kind of goes like pretty far, right? And I think it's what I wanted to say with that is that like you can you can start a business, you can, as a conscious person, as a sensitive person, as a person that's receptive to inside and outside world and everything like that. Um, and the important, I think, thing with it is to see it as an opportunity, to see it as like an opening to work on the self, to work on like
Yeah.
the exact thing that I'm doing with my clients. It's like I'm doing it on myself a lot, especially when I'm getting in this spiral, especially when things aren't going well, whatever. Like, because that's when the exact same thing is happening in me than the people that I'm seeing. And I think that's what makes it like so much richer as well, because then the more I work on myself, the more I can then share my actual experience, direct experience, with the people that come and see me, and it becomes even deeper, the therapy we do together. So it's this kind of like evolving, like kind of deepening like journey, I guess you could call it. And that's not going to happen if you just kind of plunder through or push everything through. I mean, yes, you might end up with some form of success 10 years later. And then what? The next 10 years, like, you're going to keep pushing through. You're going to keep like, just like you said, the blinders on. Um, or you're going to open up, and be with the things along the journey, and just, go deeper into yourself. And I think that's what I choose, right? And it's
Yeah.
it's like that happens all the time. It's like I've got to keep coming back to this like all the time. Just I keep catching myself, and yeah,
I think that's an important thing as a conscious person. If you can understand that you're not just going on a journey for success, you're going on a journey on self growth. If you
fucking
can
steep
do
journey on self growth. Like,
indeed, if you can do both, then you'll see that you're growing on both sides, especially when you're not having success. Then that's when you're growing, especially in consciousness,
yeah,
right?
we've taken a very different side turn from what you wanted to talk about today, Thorbjørn. Wasn't it?
No, no,
Self.
it's perfect. But what I wanted to end up with, like what I wanted to say, is that if you are going on a conscious journey of starting your own thing, which is a wonderful thing because we need more conscious people creating their own version of
And being
things.
being
We
leaders
need
in that, right? And sharing that to more and more
we
people. Like,
we need so much more of that energy, right? We need people who manifest a different way of doing things that is people positive, environment positive, which is world positive, something that doesn't exploit the world,
yeah,
right?
and
We need an alternative.
and people who actually just like, follow their own energy, like whatever they want to create in this world. Like, I mean, the only person that's going to stop them is themselves. And
Mm.
so, when you go on this path, when you choose it, like, yes, you're going to be faced with a whole bunch of challenges, right? And it's going to test you, and you're going to be tested again and again and again. And it's like, how willing are you to stand in that? How willing are you to keep going, to have that clarity of like why you're doing this, and to keep showing up, and to share that thing that you want to share with the world, right? That thing that you've been dreaming of for many years, or maybe there's something that's just come to you that you kind of like are fully in on, and you just want to like pursue that thing. Like, how willing are you to do that, and to share that with the world? And can you stay in it? Can you kind of keep showing up? Can you create the people around you that support you on that? and believe in you as well as you believe in yourself. And maybe other people won't believe in you, and then you just got to keep doing that deep work on yourself and believe in yourself. And yeah.
On the top of my document when I was making my business, I had this quote that says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, because the world needs people who have come alive." And that was sort of my motto or my slogan for that whole thing. Because that's people need people, the world needs people who have come alive. We're doing pretty good on getting housing and food for most people. We're not really looking for the essentials. We need people who actually enjoy living, because we have so much pain because people are not enjoying living. Of course, there are countries that need food and so on. That's also
it's a
that
valid
is of
point.
course also a concern.
Yeah.
But there are but overwhelmingly everyone who has food is unhappy. So that's something to work on too, right? And what they need is people who can show them that there is a way to be happy, right? There is a happy version of all these things that we have, these very capitalistic kind of unhappy versions of, right?
That's what I was trying to say, like
There is
a longer lasting happiness.
that too, right? Because every capitalistic venture is goes through 5 phases and then dies, right? More or less. And then someone is richer, but the world is poorer, right?
Yeah. There's a Greek word called edamai. I think it's called EUDMAI. I think it is, and it's like it's a pretty like ancient word, right? And it kind of like encapsulates like this kind of like lasting happiness. It's kind of like it says happiness, but it also kind of joy, and there's a lot of kind of like it's kind of like this value around happiness that kind of encapsulates this kind of feeling, but from like a embodied kind of way, I guess you could. Yeah. Anyway, I thought I'd just share that. Thorbjørn, I'm really curious. You wanted to share something today, pretty special, pretty new, pretty kind of like powerful. What is that?
Well, I wanted to first. I wanted to end the previous topic we just had, and I wanted to say that if you are a conscious person going on your own adventure in one way or another, like a business or moving to another country or whatever, I would suggest that the cheat code is trust. Listen to our other episode, our trust episode, the episode 23, I think. If you're gonna take a leap of faith, then just learn to cultivate trust. It makes everything much easier. You don't have to struggle with your thoughts and your ideas, whatever. You could just trust for the sake of trust, and that allows you to see through all these times where you have to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward, and all the fluctuations and all this. It allows you to draw a much more straight line through your progress, because your trust can take you through these fluctuating emotions and thoughts, but also external situations. Because your road to success is a windy, bendy road, and even when it looks like you're not going there, you are going there. And trust will keep you protected from that. But if you don't have trust, it's going to be a very, very difficult road, and the only thing that will teach you is trust anyway. If you have enough difficulty, will lead you to trust. So if you could start from trust, you don't have to go through all that difficulty. So that's how I wanted to close that subject out, is that you're a conscious person doing your own thing, just trust.
Yeah. Think about it like it's your compass, right? You know where you're heading, like and like you might go off sideways a little bit here and there, but this trust is your compass to keep going towards the direction that you're going to, that you dream of, that you can see, that vision that you have, right? And so I keep coming back to this because that's going to keep moving you towards that spot.
Yeah. And you might not get rich, but you'll find a way to buy food. and you will have inner wealth. You're guaranteed that,
and you might
that's
get rich, right?
better than
Who
most.
knows?
You might get rich too, or you might get famous, but either way, you'll have a happy life.
Because it's the inside, I think, wealth that really counts, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
There are too many rich and miserable people in the world. You don't want to be rich and miserable. Be happy, and then maybe you'll get rich as well. Who knows?
Maybe you can have both as well.
Maybe you can have both.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about today is going from being self-centered to being soul-centered.
You're gonna have to talk about them, both of these things, right? Because how do we know what soul-centered is before we know what self-centered is?
So I thought Bankei, the Zen Master, who is my primary source of
Finally, after all these episodes, the secret comes out, Thorbjørn.
Bankei, the Zen Master, who's written the book The Unborn, which is my primary source of information and practice
which
right
we
now.
can both highly, highly, highly recommend getting a copy of that.
Yeah. And he doesn't say anything different than any other master, but I always like the way he said things. And one of the things he brought up is this. He says basically the reason why you're unhappy, the reason why you're not enlightened is because you're self-centered. And now a lot of people might agree with that. And we have this Catholic or in Christianity, we have this Catholic guilt that we're never good enough, we're too self-centered, we're not kind enough, and all this stuff. We have to be better and do more for other people. But that's not what Bankei is talking about at all. That's not what he means by self-centered. When he says self-centered, he's being very literal. He means to be centered around yourself. Now, what does that mean exactly? It means if you're listening to your thoughts and your emotions and you're following what they say, you're self-centered. That's you being centered around yourself. Now, there are a lot of other things in your body than thoughts and emotions. There is, for example, your body. There is the feeling of well-being in your body. There's the feeling of energy. There is intuition. There are many things. So just to give a really simple example, if you are self-centered, you might order, you might have thoughts and emotions that are telling you, oh, buy a pizza, buy a big fat pizza and eat it because you're feeling sad, eat it away. You buy the pizza, you eat it, and afterwards your body feels like shit because you neglected to feel what your body needed and you were centered around yourself, not your body, not your energy, not your psychology. You were looking at your being through what your thoughts and your emotions were saying. Now you've eaten this pizza, you feel like shit, and it's all because you listen to your thoughts and your emotions. And this case is true with everything else
Can
as
I
well.
give like an example of like in my
Yeah.
life, like right now? Maybe that's
Yeah.
but you can tell me if this is self-centered or not, because we can so more or less most of my life I've since I was quite young, right? I've experienced like anxiety or like social anxiety, and then and so like on the weekend, just gone. The setting is like being with the family. It's like it's completely safe, right? It's like a uh, my wife's family. So, but anyways, a lot of this kind of social anxiety was triggered, and how I know that is, or how I'm aware of that is, like I'd have thoughts of like this like kind of classic thoughts of what you're about to say, it'll be stupid, or like
Yeah.
I'm not good enough in my Danish to say something, or like I feel this knot in my stomach, and that means anxiety, and that means like I've got to like, really worry or like kind of just like kind of go into myself and like just be like, MIA, right? Um, and so if I was being self-centered, right, then I would be like kind of reacting from that. I would be like just like literally just like going with that, right? Like I have
Yeah.
the thought and then I follow the thought, and so I don't say anything, for example.
Yeah.
Or I have the feeling not in my stomach, and so then I get even more reserved, and I go and I close up and I don't say anything, or I kind of
Yeah.
protect myself or whatever. Would that be self-centered?
Yeah, because you're centered around yourself, which is the thoughts and emotions. And so you're in your example, it's your kind of, your soul might want to say something, or it might to express something or do something, but yourself is making a lot of noise. There's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of thoughts. Now, of course, you should never try to get away from yourself. You have to allow yourself. You have to let it be there. You have to encompass it, encapsulate it. You have to pass through it. If you have emotions, be one with those emotions. If thoughts arise, and be one with those emotions. Don't fight with yourself, because that's also selfishness, right? Because where does the idea come from that I should fight my thoughts and emotions? That's another thought. That's a thought saying I don't want to be anxious. That's selfishness again. That's listening to the self that's talking in your head. So, and I thought of this like really weird metaphor, which is, think about the solar system, right? The solar system, as we all know, is the planets in the solar system. They all orbit the sun, right? Because the sun is the most important, or at least has the greatest gravitational mass, or whatever. So I had this idea that one day the planets get to talking, and the Earth is like, well, I have humans, I have nature, I have birds and animals, I have all these things. Why are we orbiting the sun when I am the one that has all these things going on? Clearly, I'm more important.
Mm.
And so the sun starts saying this to the other planets, and the other planets are like, well, that's kind of true. The sun is just kind of shining, it's not really doing anything. So how can it be that important? And the sun tries to like explain them, but they don't really listen, because the Earth has all these things to show for all these people and the humans and all they've built and everything. So the planets are like, you know what, you're right. We should change that. And then the planets, they all agree to start orbiting the Earth instead. And of course, what happens is that everything goes to total shit, and the Earth starts having like cataclysmic events, and almost everything on the Earth dies, and everything goes wrong, because everything comes out of balance. And that's because everything that happens on the Earth is allowed to exist because of the sun. The light of the sun allows the nature and the humans and the weather and all the phenomenons on Earth. They exist because of the sun. They don't exist in themselves. If the sun disappears, the Earth goes cold right away, right? And in this metaphor, the sun is the soul and the Earth is the self. So you have all these things happening inside you, all these emotions and thoughts, but how are these things allowed to exist? Who is perceiving them, right? You are the sun, you are the soul, you are the one that perceives the self, you are the one that shines on the self, which allows the self to exist. The sun shines on the Earth, which allows the nature and the humans and all this to exist. But the sun has to be important. The planets have to orbit the sun because the sun makes everything possible. So when you start to be self-centered, you start to orbit around yourself instead of orbiting around your soul. And then everything goes into chaos, because yourself is where things happen, but it is not where wisdom comes from, and it is not the origin of everything. That's your soul. So if you are resting in your soul, which Bankei calls abiding in the unborn, because you cannot see your soul, but you can be your soul, then the self unfolds and you can see all these thoughts, all these emotions, all this is happening. That's fine. You are the light of the self. You're giving light to the self. And then there's no problem. You're in peace. But when you start to follow these thoughts and these emotions inside you, all this talk, then everything just goes to chaos, because the self thinks that it's self of itself, but the self is of the sun, of the soul. The self exists because of something else. So when the self becomes self-centered, it misses the basis for its own life, its own origin, which is the sun or the soul. And what that means in effect is that if you listen to yourself and not your soul, then you suffer, because the self is this sort of program thing which mainly comes from pain. And when you were born, you didn't have a self. When you were born as a baby, you didn't have a self. There was nothing in you that was talking to you, or that was feeling a lot of things. That's why when you look at a baby, you look into their eyes, they're fucking high, they're far out, like they're just looking like this at the world, because they don't know what the fuck is going on, and they're just like, everything is just one, and they're just like, you know, they're really, really. And then after some time, things start to crystallize. They get objects, they get experiences, they understand the self, they understand others. But before that happened, all they had was this mental cognition. All they had was the soul. And because the self is always moving, it is always thoughts, there's always emotions. We look at the self, just like the sun, just like the earth was telling all the other planets, look at all these things I can do. The sun isn't really doing anything. Look at all this that's happening. We can't let our eyes be caught up in everything that's happening, because then we're just let out of the soul, out of the sun. And then we become completely enmeshed in this self, which is, the self always has a problem, right? So if you believe in the self, you always have a problem. But if you can allow the self to just unfold in whatever it is, you stay in your soul, and you let the self do what it does, then it's just this kind of inner voice that's just talking, and all these emotions and all this stuff. But then because you're not self-centered, you don't have any problems in life. If something happens and the inner voice hates that thing, then it's not a problem for you. And the thing is, this thing always happened. Like if the police come to your door and they knock on your door and they want to talk to you about something, and your self hates the police, right? And it's just complaining and whining, and it wants to get away or whatever, then you have a problem. But if you just let the self do what it does, then you can deal with the situation harmoniously. Then you're just aligned with what is. Oh, someone's at the door, we're going to talk to them. Or what are they saying? Or we're gonna follow what energy feels like, what the body feels like, what the intuition feels like, but not the self, not the little complaining thing that always has a problem or has a preference or wants things to be different. And
you can even like look at it like the anxiety thing of like, if it's coming from the self, like it's about problem solving it away, getting rid of it, fixing it, so it doesn't exist. Eradicated, right? And so if you're coming from this like kind of sun or this perspective of observing it, then even when anxiety comes up, you don't need to get rid of it anymore. You're just looking at it. So then it's not a problem to fix or to get rid of. It's just something that arises and then eventually goes down and arises, comes down.
Exactly. Then it's just your inner sun just shines on whatever arises and whatever ceases. And anxiety will melt away if you just let it be there. If you're not fighting with it and you're not trying to fix it, then slowly it's just going to melt away, because it's old emotion. It's the residue of old emotion. So it may sound like, and there is no higher spirituality than this. So it's kind of far out. But the person you thought was you is not really you. And that person is the one that creates every problem in your life. And when you want to drink or you want to eat or you want to go on vacation, it's because you want a break from yourself. Like the problem with vacation is that you can't get away from yourself, right?
You're there the whole
That's what
the whole
everyone wants.
journey. You're there at
That's what
home
everyone
and you're
wants,
there
right?
at the vacation. And you
Right. That's why people love sleep, right? Because in deep sleep, you have a little bit of a break from yourself, right? You disappear for a while and then you come back.
You also have a break in meditation. There's a pause
Exactly.
when you slow down enough in your life. There becomes a pause in that, a moment of a break, a moment of like the soul can kind of like abide in that moment.
Yeah. And I want to caution people, this is the highest practice. There's no higher practice than this. So you have to be careful about this. And if you've had mental issues and stuff like that, don't do it before you're ready, because this is something that can cause dissociation or psychosis or kind of schizophrenic episodes and all this, because you're truly realizing that you do not exist the way you thought you did. So do not go into this if you've had any history of these problems and you don't feel ready. This is you're literally understanding that you are not a person in the sense that you thought you were. So it's a very, very, very extreme understanding, and you have to be ready to
It's
do
like
it.
an awakening, right? And if you do
It is.
follow this and you do kind of experience something pretty out there in the world, or feel very connected to everything, when you kind of come from this sun or this soul, kind
Yeah.
of maybe you see it for the first time or experience it for the first time, and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore, and your world feels like it's on fire or something like this, or then in that
Yeah.
moment, just like kind of contact one of us, or
Yeah.
somebody who has had a similar experience to this, because you will need them in that moment. You need somebody
Yeah.
there. It's a pretty terrifying thing to actually be on that level, like that high energy, and then for it to kind
Yeah.
of fall away. And for some people, it's like it's pretty devastating, and it kind of triggers a lot of things in them. I've literally seen that in people, so it's actually no joke.
Yeah.
Um, it can tear people's
And
heart too.
if you feel like you've gone somewhere you can't go back, just contact us. We'll talk to you. You know, we'll help you. It won't cost anything if we know that you're ready for the straight jacket. We'll talk to you, because these things do happen, and be cautious about these things. Take it take it in an easygoing way. There's no rush with these things, and you can sort of break your mind if you go too hard,
Quick.
too fast.
But that's kind of like the path of meditation, right? Because that's like a much slower path into this. And when
Yeah.
you get there, you will get there deliberately, almost. I love that you caution people with this. That was actually a very that was a very important thing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because it is there are things here that look like other things, like dissociating and stuff like that, and that's not what it is. It's you're not trying to get away from your emotions or your thoughts. You're just giving them space without taking them personally. And you're just recognizing that there is this person inside you that you have thought was you. But like I said, and this is my key takeaway here, you weren't born with this thing. You were not born with this personality. And there might be parts of this personality that you love, but there are also parts of that personality that you hate, whatever your archetype is. The truth is that that you have a soul. And the way you know you have a soul is that whatever arises in you, there's something that sees that. There's something that's not a part of that. When you're angry, someone looks at that anger. And when you're happy, someone is looking at that happiness. And it all comes back to this self-centeredness. And a big thing of this is that, Jonathan, you were talking about you're with the family, you're anxious. Are you gonna let this rise and ebb in your inner sun, or are you gonna fight it, or you're gonna try to solve it, right? But it also, the very literal version of this is that if someone comes to you and they have if they have criticism about you and they say like, you have done this to me and I'm not happy about that. If you're self-centered, the self is probably going to tell you that, I didn't do anything wrong. It's the other person's problem, whatever. Or if you have another type of self, you'll say, yeah, I fucked up again. It's all my fault. I'm no good, whatever. But if you're not self-centered and you're in your soul, then you're just going to see what the truth is and you're just going to react to it. If the person's criticism is legitimate, you're just going to thank them for that and agree with them. And if it's not legitimate, you're just going to say, no thanks, this isn't for me. I don't see the truth of it. Without the self, your eyes see the world, your ears hear, you taste, you touch, you feel. Everything is just one-to-one. You're just one-to-one. The self is this thing between you and the world that tries to make things look different than they are by yapping in your head all the time and throwing these strong emotions up like afraid, in love, attached, averse, whatever it is. But your senses are actually just looking at the world. You're pretty fucking intelligent when it comes down to it, because you see what is, you feel what is, you hear what is. You're one-to-one with reality. And that's why in Zen they say ordinary mind is the way. What do they mean? It means that ordinary mind just perceives the world, looking around, seeing things, feeling things. You feel cold, you put on clothes. You're hungry, you want to eat. You're horny, you want to have sex. All these things are just, natural things. But the self gets in between you and the world. It's in between here, and it starts making noise and it starts distorting and all this stuff. And what enlightenment is, that when this self disappears, what happens is, at one point, it does like this. Because you realize there's no delay between you and the world. You see, you feel, everything is instant. You are the world.
You literally become one with what is everything. The bird, the tree, really, the person.
You realize you always were. Yeah. You just had this thing that was dancing in between you and the world. So if you want to experiment with this in your life, try to move from being self-centered to being soul-centered, so that when you see this self is complaining about something, just look at it and just let it do its thing. If there's a thought, just leave it alone. If there's an emotion, just be with that emotion. Allow it to be in you, allow it to be processed, allow it to sort of be free over time. And then the self becomes much more quiet because you're dealing with the emotions and you're not energizing the thoughts. And then over time, you have the self, you have the soul. The self just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and the soul just takes up more and more of your attention. And at some point, you're like, wow, I am this, like the famous statement, I am that. Sartre said, interestingly, he said this thing, I think, therefore I am, right? But then who's perceiving the thinking? And what about when there's everyone experiences gaps in thinking. When there's a moment when you don't think, what then? You still are, right? You are, therefore you are. And that's an important place to get to, because all this thinking and feeling, all this jumping around and dancing of the self, it makes you really, really unhappy if you think that that is you. And then you got to ask yourself, if it is you, why is it dancing in front of your eyes? Why are you looking at it? How is it you if you can see it? If you want to know what your soul is, just look at the thing you can't see. What is the thing you can't see right now?
What is behind that?
Yeah. Nothing is behind it. You are it. You cannot see yourself. So everything that you see is not yourself. So it always comes down to being self-centered, and being self-centered does not mean not taking care of your body, of your mind, of your being. Because a lot of people's self is self-neglecting or self-abandoning, right? So a lot of people have a self that means that, oh, I'm going to let other people do what they want to do, or I'm going to serve other people. I'm going to think of other people first. When we think about self-centeredness, we think about someone who is always giving to themselves. but a lot of people's selves stop them from giving anything to themselves, to their body. They don't rest when they need to. They don't take the food they need to. They don't try to get the love they need. So being self-centered, it can be someone who is trying to take from other people and give nothing to others, but it can also be someone who tries to give everything to others and nothing to themselves. And it can be anything in between. The point is, whatever this voice in your head is saying is not good for you and is not the truth. And it will get you upset again and again and again.
Even
if you take
when you're listening to this right now, it won't like this. Like my mind's not liking this. My mind's like, you're pretty stupid, right? Like you what you're talking about is so simple. Like this is like my mind's kind of like just like saying like this is too simple. Like this is too dumb. Like how would I ever get through life without my thoughts, without my feelings?
Yeah.
And whatever your mind is saying about this, like let it say that, right? It's not gonna like this stuff. But just play with it, see where it goes. Follow the energy. Follow, like if you're wherever you are on your journey is very okay. And this stuff, if you get even like 10% of this stuff and try it in your life and just see what happens, like I mean that's where something might be born, right? And when you were like you said, when you were born, you weren't born with these thoughts.
All you had was your mental cognition. All you had was this ordinary mind. You just knew how to look. And you say this thing about being, it's too simple, it's too stupid. If right now, while me and Jonathan were talking, a child would say something and it would get recorded, then even though my attention was on Jonathan and on the subject, all my thinking was on this, and Jonathan's thinking was on this as well, he would instantly know that a child had said something. Without thinking, he would know a child had said something. He would know the gender of the child as well. He would know that instantly in his, simple mind that doesn't think anything. And if a dog was barking, he would know that too. And if suddenly the temperature got cold, he would know that and he would put on clothes. Or if he got hungry, he would realize that. And that's with all his attention on this subject, on this podcast. Still a part of his mind is intelligent. It still knows. And what's more is he would hear the sound of the dog without trying to hear it. All his attention here, he would hear it anyway. It would come into his attention automatically. And he would know it was a dog. And he would know what kind of dog it was and how big it was. And he would know that without any thinking in an instantaneous of a moment. Now, do you really think you need thinking if your mind can do that? You don't. You don't need to think. Your mind is so intelligent, just as it is, without any kind of self. And in that intelligence, there is peace and quiet because there is no one talking. And yet, nothing is known, yet there is nothing that is not known.
Everything is perfectly managed in the unborn.
Exactly. And it's unborn because you can't find it. But you can see it at work in every moment of your life. Well, we're back to the far out episodes.
I love that you opened up this, Thorbjørn. I love that you talked about your source of knowing. That's
yeah.
What a gift.
I finally can do it some justice. It's taken me 5 years with that stupid book, but I'm finally starting to understand some of it.
So simple, right?
Yeah.
But please go easy on this stuff, and we want you to kind of like go into it like on and consciously. And if you if something crazy far out happens, then just please do kind of get in touch. And yeah, we're always here for you. So it's or get in touch with somebody who can support you in
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
You can find us on LinkedIn and on Facebook. But yeah, please go at this in an easygoing way, because everyone who rushes ahead comes to the precipice and they flee back from it. And they might do that for years afterwards, because it is terrifying to come to your inner emptiness too soon. Don't do that. Just chill and follow the path at your own pace. Don't force this stuff. Don't play around with your psychology. Because if you take some drugs and you take some mushrooms or whatever, it wears off. But some of this stuff does not wear off if you do it the right way. So,
Once learned, you can never unlearn. So
yeah, the things you cannot unsee.
Go easy and enjoy being abiding in the soul or the sun or the light or the inner knowing, the seeing, the observing.
Yeah, it's just you. It's nothing complicated.
Man, we got to get together like with the people listening in, like in person, and like share deeper into this stuff. Like that's where we got. That's where the energy is, man.
Yeah. We will.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
All right, folks. That's I think that's it from us today. Unless there's anything else you want to. I think you've shared just the right amount. So man.
Yeah, I've shared enough.
We'll see you on the trail, and until next week.
See you on the trail.